Well, Razorback fans, you've had a little more time to think about it, as have I. Can this be fixed? Can the Hogs still salvage the season? Let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Tuesday, I guess is what it already is. This has been quite the day, a few days, and my job in my field too, but I'm glad that everybody is tuning in and listening in and watching in and all of that fun stuff to go along with it too. And we're going to try to have some fun here on the podcast, just like we always do. But I will say the question's been thrown around to me so much. And after doing my radio show and seeing the reactions from so many people, and a lot of it is overreaction, as we all knew it. Like, I did a podcast last week when I was like, what happens if Arkansas loses to BYU? And I went back and listened to it just because I wanted to hear, like, I'm not saying I want to hear myself if I was right, but I wanted to hear how many, like, things were very similar to what I think was going to happen. And lo and behold, almost everything that I said was going to happen has pretty much happened. Like, everybody's pretty much taken it to another level, another step of how upset they are and how mad they are and how they're done with Sam Pittman. They're done with Arkansas. I mean, I even had people that were tweeting at me saying that, like, you know, Hunter Yurachek dropped the ball because he hired Sam Pittman instead of Deion Sanders. My goodness, folks. Like, that's the type of stuff where it's like, I get being frustrated and I get being upset, but there's only a certain, like, level of frustration that you really need to vent until it becomes completely and totally illogical and irrational. I know it's a fan stands for fanatic, and I love you all, but sometimes y'all need to, I don't know, maybe calm yourself somehow in some way. I don't know, but it was pretty incredible to see some of the reactions of how everything went down and how many strong feelings were being thrown out. But the question has become this, with at least on my radio show and also this entire season in general. The question becomes of, can the Razorbacks fix this? Can they fix their struggles? Can they turn it around? Have we seen enough in 3 games to be able to say what you can fix and what you cannot fix? And I went back and I checked out some of the highlights of the game, and I checked out some of the lowlights of the game against BYU. And I totally get it. I totally get the outrage of what was been seen and what has been seen. But I will admit there are certain elements to where I looked at it and I'm like, you know, this team may not be a team that's going to go and win 10 games. May not even win 9. But 8 wins, it's still a possibility. Some of you are feeling maybe 7. Some of you are feeling 6. Some of you feel like it's going to be like 4 and 8. So, again, you're not going to please everybody. But can Arkansas actually fix this? Can they fix the issues that they have? And my answer is yes. Because what were the biggest problems in that game against BYU? Like, what really led to the demise of the Razorbacks in that game? I mean, I don't think it was just one thing, but let's kind of count through the ones and the problems that they really had more than anything, and let's see if they are fixable problems, all right? Not saying they will be fixed, but are they fixable? First and foremost, penalties. Arkansas had 14 penalties in this game. I saw Tom Murphy, I believe, of HogSports.com. I think he wrote an article saying that it was the most penalties or the most penalized game that Arkansas has had since 2011 against Texas A&M when Arkansas came back to win. And the penalties, without a doubt, were a major, major problem and led to a lot of the struggles that Arkansas had in this game. Okay? Now, keep in mind when we're going through this that we are talking about a loss by 7 points. All right? It's still a loss nonetheless, but it wasn't an embarrassment. It wasn't a Chad Morris level thing like some of you want to make it think and make it look out to be, but it's a 7-point game. Penalties. Folks, penalties is a very fixable thing. It's easier said than done, but it is extremely fixable. Something you can do throughout the season. Because at the end of the day, that's stuff that you have to not do. The holding penalties, the false starts, delay of games, pass interferences, whatever. Those are things that can be fixed. Officiating crews are going to call things differently. Matchups are going to cause things to be differently. But really, at the end of it, it is something that you can fix and you can be better from. So that, yes, absolutely. Arkansas can get better from that. What about some of the questionable calls or the questionable decision-making that Arkansas had in this game? Like, for instance, going forward on 4th and 1. That's a fixable problem. If Arkansas can just, be more decisive in what they want to do or maybe have a better play set up, because I don't care what anybody says, 4th and 1 or 4th and short, I'm always taking the ball under center. And you got KJ Jefferson. I know that's, okay, well, some people are going to say this. I don't care. No, that's a play that you should get every single time. That's fixable if they actually do it. And it's also fixable if you actually make that decision in the right moment of the game. Now, if it's 4th and short and you got to have it, you got to have it. But if it's 4th and short and you're up 14-0 and your defense is playing great and you're around midfield, instead of running that play out of shotgun, just be like, hey, our defense is doing good. Let's pin them deep. We'll come back and we'll get it done. That's a fixable problem. That's a fixable issue. So what about the offensive line and those issues? Now, this is the one that it gets a little bit tougher because you only have who you have. And as Sam Pittman brought up in his press conference, he discussed about how the fact that some of the offensive linemen for Arkansas have been dealing with some hand issues, if you will, having to get wrapped up and dealing with that. Devin Manuel has been really one of the guys that they've been missing the most, and he's been dealing with injury. He hasn't really seen the field much, so that's been problematic. Kutas got hurt, and he had to move Brady Latham over, and then we saw what happened with that and some of the struggles that came from that. Andrew Chamblee had some struggles. So, there's only so much you can do with the players that you have. There's only the team will only go so far. There's only so many things you can do as an offensive line when you have those particular players and those particular position groups, and that's all you have. That being said, I don't know if it can be fixed fully, but it can get better. It can be an offensive line that gets better, that gets healthier as the season goes on. Now, you may not want to hear that. You may disagree with me. You may say, hey, it is who we are, and that's fine. Again, it's your opinion, it's my opinion. That's what we do. That's what we have fun here. We like to have opinions. But I believe that if they just get healthier, if you get Manuel back, move Latham back to where he's most comfortable, time goes on, gets healthier, I believe the offensive line can get better. Doesn't mean it'll get great. Doesn't mean it'll be good. Doesn't mean it won't have struggles. But it can get better. That part of it can be a fixable issue. So you're talking about a game that Arkansas lost against BYU that we all of us agree, should not have happened. Arkansas should not have lost that game. We are all on board with that. But I think that you give credit to BYU for playing well. I think you also look at it as, hey, you got a long season ahead of you. But I'm taking the approach, and again, this may make some of you mad, but I'm taking the approach that the biggest problems that Arkansas is facing right now as a football team are fixable issues. By and large, all of them. Rocket Sanders, we'll talk about him in a second, but for the most part, you have the team, you have the skill sets, you have the guys, you have the quality players to get it done. But you just got to stop beating yourself. That's been the biggest issue. Self-inflicted penalties, self-inflicted wounds. You get rid of that, you at least get better at that, and these are the types of games that don't end up happening. So it comes down to it's fixable. It's fixable. But will they fix it? Will they get better from it? Will they learn from it? Will they adjust to it? That's not up to me. That's not up to you. That's up to them. And if they don't, that's a problem. And there are reasons to be upset more and more and more. But I'm not giving up on this team just yet. I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom and that the season's over like some people feel like. They still haven't even played an SEC game yet. They could still have a successful season. You're still going to watch them on Saturday against LSU at 6 o'clock in Death Valley, and you're still going to get mad if they lose. But you know what? If they win, they're going to reel you right back in, and then you're going to get all excited once again. Like, that's just it's the way it is. It's the way it is. And that's my real only point, folks. I am looked at as probably overly optimistic and overly positive at times. I am, and I'll admit it. It's just who I am in life, you know? Like, I always try to look at the positive things no matter what it is, even if it's as simplistic as Razorback football. I admit that and I accept that. But I also believe that there are reasons to feel that it can be better from what we saw. I think that there's a lot of reasons to believe that this team, if they fix those issues that they had, can still have a really good year. But don't act like you're going to give up on the Razorbacks. Don't act like you're going to stop watching the games. Don't act like you're going to do this, that, and the other. You're still going to do it. I'm still going to do it. And we're still going to react. And we're still going to have fun when they win. And we're still going to be pissed off when they lose. Like, it's who we are. But the whole point is that it can be fixed. It can be fixed. Just please fix it if you don't mind. Makes my life easier. Makes your life easier. Everybody's life gets a lot easier after that. Folks, snap into this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $200 off in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than now to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Visit FanDuel.com and include money lines, props, etc. around your team as you go throughout the rest of the football season.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, a few updates here that we want to go into, just dealing with Razorback football, of course, that we have an update on Rocket Sanders, kind of. They had Rocket, who got hurt in the Western Carolina game down in Little Rock, and he hasn't played since. He was out against Kent State. He was out against BYU. But what about LSU? Well, he's still pretty much questionable, according to Sam Pittman. He was asked about in his press conference yesterday, and he says it's probably too early to tell on that injury. He says we're going to have him out there here today, which was yesterday during practice, and to see where he's at. And that's all we know. That's all we know about Rocket and his situation. Now, we know about the issues, as we all talked about, and some of the things that can be fixed and struggled. Here's another thing that can be fixed if it goes and he gets healthy, is Rocket Sanders being back in the lineup. I know that the rushing attack has struggled at times, and there's been even things I've thought about where I'm like, why is Dominic Johnson only getting 2 carries when he was averaging 7 yards a pop? Why did A.J. Green not get as many carries when it seemed like he had some sort of flow going? KJ Jefferson was another thing that found out from Sam Pittman that he was going into the game against BYU a little banged up. Didn't go into specifics, but said he was banged up, which if that's the case, he's fine now. According to Sam Pittman, he's fine, but that's something to monitor and something to look for. But getting Rocket Sanders back would be a huge difference maker. I don't care what anybody says. The guy's big, the guy's strong, the guy's a captain, the guy's been around, the guy's had success. If he gets back on the field against LSU, first off, you want him 100% healthy if he's going to do that. But second off, if he is going to get back on the field, he's going to be somebody that will be an impact player, someone to watch for. The offensive line's got to do their job too, as we all know. But I guess we'll wait and see as this week goes on. We'll have some updates on that, and hopefully he can play because that's going to be huge for Arkansas. The other thing of significant news was Arkansas and Texas A&M game time being announced. It's 11 a.m. in Arlington. Awesome. Actually, I don't mind 11 a.m. games when they're on the road or just away from Fayetteville. Like, the only time I want home games at 6 is when Arkansas is at home. It's for the tailgating and for the atmosphere, like this past weekend, which was awesome. That's the only time I really like having 6 o'clock games or even 2:30 games when they're on CBS. Like, I don't mind those either. But 11 a.m. games, I hate them when they're at home, but I love them when they're on the road. I love them when they're away. So that'll be nice. And I feel like that game with Arkansas and A&M has been at 11 a.m. more often than not. I feel like only twice maybe has it been at night. I think there was that one 8 p.m. game that was miserable. That was terrible. I think they've had a 6 p.m. game before, but it's always either been at 2:30 on CBS or at 11 a.m. But that's when the game's going to be. And it's also going to be either on ESPN or SEC Network. So mark your calendars. Probably SEC Network, the way things are going to go. But also, I thought it was kind of cool that with the game against LSU this weekend, you're going to have Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit on the call for that game. Not many times has that happened in Razorback history. I think I saw Hog Flashbacks mention it, that I think this is only the third time that those two guys have been on the call for one of those games that Arkansas has been a part of. It's like 03 South Carolina, I think, was one of them. I still always think back to that game against UNLV in Little Rock, like in 01 after they lost to him in the Vegas Bowl, and it was like one of the worst football games of all time. I think Arkansas had like a pick 6 to win 14-10. And it was like Mike Tirico was calling it, and like Lee Corso, and I think maybe Kirk Herbstreit was there. I just remember it was like the A team. I was like, my goodness, how much college football's changed. Could you imagine, like, and this is no offense because me as a Razorback fan, but could you imagine those guys, that A team caliber type of broadcasters going to War Memorial Stadium to call Arkansas and UNLV to open the season? Oh, I wouldn't think so, but still, that'll be a cool thing. Playing night games in LSU and in Baton Rouge is always going to be tough. So I think Arkansas opened up as a 18.5-point underdog. I'm not saying Arkansas is winning, but man, I'm probably taking Arkansas on the points in that, though. That's a lot of points. 18.5? What's crazy is and we'll do our preview of LSU later. Caroline Hinton's actually going to be joining us for Locked On LSU. She's pretty good. She's not bad, even for an LSU fan. But I forgot the fact that the last 3 years between these two teams, the final score has been dictated by 3 points. Arkansas lost the one at home in 2020 by 3. They won against LSU in overtime by 3 with Cam Whittle doing the gritty, and then last year they lost by 3 at home. So I know it's different years, different everything, but there's something to that game that at least shows that it might be a little bit closer than what we think. But we'll talk about that and preview that game later. But this episode is brought to you by Markel. From Fayetteville to El Dorado and everywhere in between, Markel has been helping Arkansas small business community for over 30 years. Markel is a global specialty insurer with a truly people-first approach. And to them, insurance is more than just a piece of paper. It's a promise to help people to get back on their feet. We spend a third of our lives working, so on-the-job injuries can be expected. You work hard to build your business, so it's important to make sure that you and your employees have the right insurance coverage. Whether you're new to the business or celebrating your 25th year anniversary, whether you have 1 employee or 1,000 employees, Markel aims to understand your workers' compensation insurance needs. Find a local independent agent to get free workers' compensation insurance quote today at markelinsurance.com/lockedon. That's MARKEL insurance.com/lockedon. Markel, insuring America's small businesses since 1930. Insurance carrier coverage, dividends, and services availability may vary by state. Markel is a registered trademark of Markel Group, Incorporated. This podcast is also brought to you by Gametime. We know about finding tickets can be really tough to do, especially if you're going on the road, for instance, against LSU this weekend in Baton Rouge. Probably never been there before. Maybe you don't know really what it's about. You don't really know who to trust because, let's be honest, you can't trust any LSU fans. They're terrible. So don't worry about that anymore when it comes to buying your tickets because you have Gametime. You just download their app, and it is the best place to get tickets or just last-minute tickets because they do great deals on last-minute tickets, and it is the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. I know friends of mine that went to the game in Fayetteville this past weekend. They used Gametime, and they were like they told me and texted me like, dude, I'm so glad that your podcast did Gametime tickets and told me about it because that was the easiest process I've ever had. And I was like, that's why they do it on Locked On. That's why they do it with the Locked On Razorbacks because we like to make it easy on everybody. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Do a little State of the SEC edition. Who's good? Who's good? It's kind of like my favorite thing of just like trying to figure out who the crap is actually good in this conference. Because this past weekend, I wouldn't say there was any major surprises, but there were a few things that stood out to me. And some of them I'm like, man, like I don't care what anybody says. The SEC West is up for grabs. It really is. I'm not saying Arkansas is going to win it or even be in contention, but it doesn't look good. Right now, at least. It doesn't look good. Like LSU looks like the best team in the West right now. Maybe. Again, maybe. But it's not like they've just been setting the world on fire. I mean, Georgia beat South Carolina 24-14. They looked pretty pedestrian at times. But South Carolina was pretty terrible. Like, they didn't score any points in the second half. But still, like, they didn't look overly impressive. Alabama beat South Florida by 17-3. And they're going to keep going back and back to quarterbacks. They're back on Milroe now. So, like, they got problems. They got problems. They got Ole Miss coming up this weekend, too. Florida beat Tennessee at home. Like, we all wrote off Florida, and then they come flying in, and they beat Tennessee 29-16 at home. Almost had a fight breakout. I guess it did have a fight because then guys got suspended for it. Now, LSU smoked Mississippi State 41-14. So, that's a good, impressive win for LSU. But honestly, if you're a Razorback fan, you kind of wanted LSU to blow out Mississippi State. Take any advantage you can get. Ole Miss beat Georgia Tech 48-23. Okay. A&M smoked UNL Monroe. Okay. Auburn beat Samford. Okay. Vanderbilt lost to UNLV. Good for Barry Odom, head coach out there. I love it. Kentucky beat Akron 35-3. There's that. Missouri beat Kansas State, which was a good win for them at home on a field goal. 61-yarder, too. That's pretty incredible. But they're sitting at 3-0. Eli Drinkwitz made some weird decisions at the end of that game, too, so they're lucky to win. But point is, I still don't know who's good. Georgia and LSU, I mean, if I'm doing my power rankings of SEC teams right now, still having Georgia number 1, LSU number 2, like maybe Ole Miss at number 3, Bama 4. And then after that, like, who the crap knows? Because I don't even feel confident about that list in the top 4. Other than, like, I still think Georgia's the best team. And I still think LSU's the second best. But after that, I mean, we'll find out with Ole Miss and Alabama this weekend. But the point is this, is that, like, there's nothing in the SEC or in the SEC West specifically that I look at and I'm like, oh, yeah, there's no chance that this team can win or that team can win or that team can finish ahead of this team. Like, it's the most gettable SEC football season, especially in the West, that has happened in a long time. Because Bama ain't Bama what they used to be, which is nice for a change. Still got some work to do, but who knows? Maybe Arkansas, as my little sign back here says, their state, they control their own destiny, can still win the West, can still win the SEC. Guess we'll find out a little more about that this weekend. Appreciate everybody listening in to Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNabors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.